Here is the script converted into simple English paragraphs. Looking at the dark sky. Look up at the sky on a clear night. What do you see? Darkness. A huge, overwhelming black emptiness with just a few stars scattered around. But during the day, the sky is flooded with a bright, blinding blue. You were probably taught as a child that our sun is a giant lighthouse throwing its light across the solar system. And if it is such an incredibly powerful lighthouse, here is a simple logical question. Why does the vast space between that nuclear furnace and our little rock remain in complete darkness? Most people accept this everyday fact without thinking. They believe space is dark because it is empty or because the sun only lights up things near it. That is simply wrong. Every second, our sun releases an amount of energy equal to billions of nuclear explosions, firing photons in every direction without any preference. Sunlight does not travel through a private direct tunnel to your eyeballs. The space around Earth is not a silent, dark abyss. It is violently saturated with radiation. It is literally flooded by an ocean of light traveling at 300,000 kilometers per second. The entire solar system is shining with an intensity that would overwhelm your mind. You are floating in the middle of that blinding ocean of light right now, yet when you look into it, you only see nothingness, an infinite blackness. This is not a mistake of your biology. It is a direct consequence of quantum mechanics, the geometry of our universe, and how matter truly interacts with energy. What you call darkness is actually your own geometric blindness to a universe that is on fire. Why light is invisible by nature. To understand this illusion of cosmic darkness, we first need to destroy a ridiculous idea that movies, television, and poor education have planted in your brain. Think of any space movie you have watched. A spaceship fires a laser and suddenly you see a bright red or blue line of light crossing the empty space. It is a spectacular image, but it is completely wrong in terms of physics. Light does not work that way. Light is strictly invisible. You cannot see a ray of light crossing in front of you from the side. It is physically impossible. To understand why, you need to look at what it actually means to see something. When you say you see something, whether it is an apple on a table, a mountain in the distance, or the moon at night, what is really happening at the microscopic level is a direct physical impact. Light, which is made up of fundamental particles called photons, travels through space, hits the surface of the object you are looking at, bounces off, and then travels in a straight line directly into the pupil of your eye. These tiny packets of energy pass through your lens, hit your retina, trigger a chemical and electrical reaction that travels along your optic nerve to your brain, and your brain then builds the image. The key rule you must understand is this. You can only perceive a photon if that photon enters directly into your eyeball and dies by crashing into your retina. If an incredibly powerful beam of photons passes 1 millimeter from your eye going from left to right, you see absolutely nothing. The dust experiment. Imagine you're locked in a completely dark room, painted with a light-absorbing matte black color, with no single particle of dust floating in the air. A purified vacuum. Now, a very powerful flashlight is turned on, and the beam of light is aimed across the room, from wall to wall, passing just centimeters from your face. What would you see of that beam of light crossing the space in front of you? The answer feels strange, but it is absolute. Nothing. The room would remain in total darkness. The photons are traveling frantically from the flashlight to the opposite wall, brushing past your nose, but since none of those photons are being redirected into your pupils, for your brain, that beam of light simply does not exist. Now, if you take a handful of fine dust or talcum powder and throw it into the air across the path of the flashlight, suddenly and magically the beam of light appears. It becomes visible in the air. Why does this happen? Because now the photons from the flashlight are hitting the particles of matter. The dust acts like millions of tiny, irregular spherical mirrors. The photons impact the matter, bounce off chaotically in all directions, and most importantly, a fraction of those bounced photons shoot directly toward your eyes. You are not seeing the beam of light crossing the room. You are seeing the illuminated dust. Why the sky is blue? Take this undeniable logic to an astronomical scale. When you look at the daytime sky on Earth, you see it glowing a brilliant blue. Our planet is wrapped in an atmosphere, a thick and dense soup of gases made up of nitrogen, oxygen, and other molecules. When the endless avalanche of photons coming from the sun hits our atmosphere, exactly the same thing happens as with the dust in the dark room. The gas molecules intercept the solar photons, specifically those matching the short wavelength of the color blue, and scatter them in all directions. The sky lights up because the entire atmosphere becomes a massive prism that redirects billions of photons toward your eyes, no matter where you are standing. But as soon as you cross that thin protective layer of air, the true and unchanging face of our universe begins. Outer space is not a room full of dust or an atmosphere saturated with gas. It is an immense and terrifying vacuum. Between Earth and the sun exists a vacuum so pristine it defies human understanding. The sun fires its radiant fury, injecting photons into this vacuum at a frantic rate. That light floods space, traveling at 300,000 kilometers per second in all directions simultaneously. But without finding solid planets immediately, without finding an atmosphere, without finding massive obstacles to crash into and bounce back toward you, that light continues its journey in a tomb-like silence, in a straight line toward the cosmic nothingness. The light is there, it is overwhelming, and it flows around you in unimaginable quantities, but it is light that passes you by, and as we have established with cold mathematical precision, light that does not hit you is, forever, darkness. The paradox of the dark night sky. You now understand the basics. Nearby space is dark because there is no matter to deflect light toward your eyes. But this only scratches the surface of the problem, and here is where your common sense will begin to completely crumble. Let us leave our small, comfortable solar system. Ignore our sun for a moment and look into the deep abyss. When you stand in the middle of the night and look up, away from the annoying light pollution of modern cities, you can see about 3,000 stars with the naked eye. Small, weak white dots blinking against a vast black canvas. That image is a trap. It gives you a false sense of scale and makes you believe that stars are rare or scarce. Our galaxy, the Milky Way, does not contain just a few thousand stars. It contains at least 100 billion nuclear furnaces burning right now. And the observable universe, the small bubble we can see, holds trillions of similar galaxies. We are talking about a number of stars so obscene, so overwhelmingly large that your biological brain is physically incapable of processing it. And here is where the true logical nightmare begins. This is a problem that tormented the brightest minds in history for centuries, and most preferred to ignore it because the answer terrified them. Imagine you walk into the center of an immense ancient forest, dense, extending thousands of kilometers in every possible direction. If you stop and look around, you see the trees closest to you, then trees behind those trees, and trees much further back. If you try to look into the distance through the forest, your line of sight, no matter what angle your eyes point to, will inevitably end by hitting the bark of a tree. It does not matter if that tree is 1 meter away or 20 kilometers away. Your vision cannot escape the forest. In the distance, the trunks overlap each other until they form a solid wall of wood in every direction. There are no empty gaps. The basic geometry prevents you from seeing beyond the wood. Now take that same relentless geometry and apply it to the fabric of the cosmos. If we assume, as the scientific community arrogantly did for a long time, that the universe is infinite in size, static, has existed eternally, and is more or less uniformly distributed with bright stars, then the night sky should behave exactly like that infinite forest. Every geometric line of sight that extends from your pupil into deep space should sooner or later hit directly onto the blazing surface of a star. It could be a nearby star 4 light-years away, or it could be a supergiant star 80 billion light-years away. The distance does not matter at all, because if the universe is infinite and has been there forever, that light, no matter how far away, has had an infinite amount of time to travel through the vacuum and arrive exactly at your eyes on Earth. Some people try to argue that the light from distant stars is too weak to see. That is nonsense. The rigorous science of optics shows us that although a distant star appears smaller and weaker, in an infinite universe there would be far more stars in that same distant region, exactly compensating for the loss of individual brightness. Mathematically, the effect cancels out. The total brightness reaching us remains extreme. Think about it with complete coldness. If every line of sight ends in a star, then there should not exist a single dark patch in the sky. None. Zero. The entire night sky, every single square millimeter of the celestial dome above your head, should blaze day and night with the same destructive intensity as the very surface of our sun. You should be roasting alive under a dome of continuous stellar radiation. The very concept of night should not exist on this planet. Earth should be scorched and sterilized by the combined light of an infinite number of suns staring directly at it. But you go outside at night, breathe fresh air, and you do not disintegrate. You see darkness. You see black space between the stars. And that is a monumental contradiction. The simple and mundane existence of a dark sky at night is absolute and irrefutable proof that one of our fundamental assumptions about the very structure of reality is catastrophically wrong. You have lived your whole life believing that the darkness of night is normal, when in reality that darkness is the greatest cry for help from modern physics. It is telling us that the universe is hiding a secret. This is what academics call the Olbers paradox, a paradox that terrified astronomers for hundreds of years. Why dust cannot save us. Perhaps you are trying to find an easy way out in your mind. Perhaps you think space is not truly empty, that there are gigantic clouds of cosmic dust and interstellar gas floating in the immensity, blocking the light from background stars. You think it is like a cloudy day on Earth, where thick clouds block out the sun, Let us apply the unbreakable laws of thermodynamics to that idea. If you have an infinite and eternal universe full of countless stars throwing out radiation without ceasing, and you place an immense cloud of dark dust in the middle of all that fire, what do you think happens to that light? Energy does not disappear by magic just because it is convenient for you. The dust absorbs the photons. By doing so, it inevitably heats up. It heats up more and more. And by receiving infinite energy from infinite stars over infinite time, that dust cloud would heat up until it ended up shining with the exact same merciless intensity as the surface of the very stars it was supposedly trying to hide. The curtain itself would become a nuclear furnace. The entire sky would still be an incandescent inferno. Dust cannot save you. Nothing material can protect you from a universe infinite in time and space. The universe had a beginning. The only logical, strictly mathematical and physical way to switch off this cosmic carnage of light and allow the calm of night to exist is to accept that our most basic and sacred premise was a complete lie. The universe is not eternal. The cosmos had a defined beginning in time. It was born approximately 14 billion years ago in a state of density and temperature so extreme that it crushes our traditional physical models. That simple and violent fact of having a date of birth changes irrevocably the geometry of everything you perceive and everything you think you know. Light is not magical or instantaneous. It travels at a strict and non-negotiable speed of 300,000 kilometers per second. It is the maximum speed permitted by the very fabric of reality. Therefore, when you look up at the starry sky, you are never seeing the universe as it is right now. You are looking directly and literally into the past. If you observe a star that is 2 million light-years away, the photons hitting your retina today began their journey through the vacuum 2 million years ago, long before our species learned to walk upright. You are looking at quantum ghosts. The night sky is a visual graveyard. Apply this iron logic to the whole of existence. If the universe is only 14 billion years old, then light has only had 14 billion years to travel through the stellar vacuum. There are trillions of galaxies burning far beyond that geometric limit, but their light simply has not had enough time to cross the intergalactic abyss and reach this small planet. That light is still traveling desperately toward us right now, devouring kilometers, but it has not yet reached your eyes. You, and everyone who inhabits this planet, are prisoners inside an imaginary sphere, a bubble of observable information that dictates the limits of our reality. What lies outside that geometric bubble is completely invisible to you. Not because it does not exist, but because time itself forbids you from seeing it. And inside our particular bubble of space and time, the number of stars is mathematically insufficient to paint the entire sky a blazing white. That is why you see the void. When you look at the infinite darkness between the stars, you are not seeing nothingness. You are staring directly at the implacable wall of time. You are seeing the chronological boundary of how far light has managed to travel in 14 billion years. The light from the beginning of time. If the universe was born in an absolute and hot beginning, then in its first moments all of physical space was compressed into a glowing plasma, a primordial fire immensely more brilliant than any star you can conceive. That raw light of creation filled absolutely every microscopic corner of the newborn space. By pure and unavoidable physical deduction, the light from that original inferno should still be traveling and should be bombarding Earth from absolutely every conceivable direction right now, flooding the sky with a lethal glow no matter where you look. And yet, you still see dark space. The answer to this will shatter your concept of space and the void. You have to erase the prehistoric idea that space is an empty and inert black box where planets float. Space is not a static or passive stage. Space is a dynamic structure, a physical entity that deforms. And more importantly, space itself is stretching, expanding geometrically in absolutely every direction, dragging galaxies with it like breadcrumbs trapped in a loaf of bread rising in the oven. This is not a pretty analogy for children. It is the most brutal and undeniable metric reality of our universe. Now think about what happens to a ray of primordial energy when it is forced to travel through a spatial fabric that is stretching beneath it. Think of light as what it truly is. A continuous wave of electromagnetic energy. The only physical difference between brilliant burning blue light and dim red light is not a mystical quality. It is simply the physical distance that exists between the crest of one wave of light and the next. If you compress a wave of light by violently shortening the distance between its peaks, your biological eyes perceive it as high-energy colors like blue or violet. If you stretch that same wave by lengthening the geometric distance between the peaks, your eyes process it as low-energy red light. And here lies the master trap of celestial mechanics. As that immense light from the beginning of time traveled for 14 billion years through the void trying to reach your eyes, the very space it was traveling through was stretching relentlessly. As space expanded, it physically stretched the light waves passing through it. That primordial light, which originally was an intense and deadly white, began to stretch over the eons. Its wave lengthened, passing from white to yellow, then to orange, and then to deep red. But the expansion of the universe did not stop. It continued relentlessly. The light wave stretched so much, its peaks separated so extremely, that its wavelength went completely outside the limits of the visual spectrum of our species. That light transformed into infrared radiation and finally stretched until it became radio microwaves. This leads us to an absolute scientific conclusion. The night sky has never been dark. The entire cosmos is burning furiously with the radiation of its own birth. If your biology could be altered right now, if your optic nerve and retinas could be modified to be capable of perceiving microwave light, you would never know night again. If you looked at the sky in any direction, day or early morning, you would not see empty space. You would see a solid, overwhelming, and radioactive wall of fire enveloping Earth in a suffocating way. You are floating in the very molten core of the original explosion of reality, but you are anatomically blind to it. Your beloved night darkness is from beginning to end a miserable illusion manufactured by the incompetence of your eyes, the accelerating universe and dark energy. What has been explained so far is just a geometric curiosity of the past. Now comes the hard and cold truth of the future, the truth that most astrophysicists prefer not to discuss at formal dinners because it destroys any trace of human optimism. We have established as an undeniable fact that space is not a fixed stage. It stretches. For decades, human arrogance dictated a simple logic. If the universe was born from a great explosion, the gravity of all the matter, of all those trillions of galaxies pulling on each other, should be slowing that expansion down little by little. Think of throwing a stone into the sky. It goes up fast at first, but gravity slows it down until it stops and falls back. The entire scientific community bet its reputation on the cosmos doing exactly that. Expanding, but more and more slowly. In the 1990s, we finally built instruments precise enough to measure that supposed deceleration, and the universe slapped us in the face with a fact that destroyed all our theoretical models. The expansion is not slowing down. It is accelerating. Every second that passes, the fabric of reality stretches faster than the second before. There is an invisible, omnipresent, and repulsive force pushing the fabric of space outward. We call it dark energy, a poetic and useless name to try to hide our deep empirical ignorance about its origin, but its mathematical effect is absolutely indisputable. It makes up approximately 70% of everything that exists, and it does not care about your existence. It does not interact with your matter in a conventional way. It is simply tearing apart the geometry of the universe at a frantic rate. Apply your logic now. If the space between us and a distant galaxy stretches faster and faster, we inevitably reach a physical limit where the amount of new space being created each second exceeds the speed of light. No physical object travels through space faster than 300,000 kilometers per second. That would violate special relativity. But space itself does not have that geometric restriction. Space can be created and expand between 2 points at whatever speed it pleases. Imagine you're running on a giant exercise treadmill moving backwards. If you run at 10 km/h and the treadmill goes back at 20 km/h, the simple vector math tells you that you will never reach the control panel. No matter how much energy you exhaust running, you will never get there. You are the light in this accelerating universe. Out there, at unfathomable distances, entire galaxies are throwing their light desperately toward Earth. Those photons travel at the maximum permitted speed, fired directly toward us. But the cosmic void in front of them is swelling so absurdly fast that in net terms those photons are moving backward relative to our telescopes. They will never arrive. It does not matter if we wait 10 billion years or 100 trillion years. It is physically impossible for that light to cross the infinite gap and reach your eyes. This creates a relentless geometric boundary around us, an inverted cosmological event horizon. And the mathematical nightmare is that due to the incessant acceleration of dark energy, entire galaxies are crossing that horizon at this very instant. Once they cross that invisible line, their light stretches to infinity, they fade away completely, and they leave our observable physical reality forever. Every day that dawns on this planet, the universe we can interact with becomes smaller and smaller. We are becoming physically isolated. The darkness you see in the night sky today is only a temporary illusion created by your primitive eyes filtering out the radiation of the Big Bang. But the darkness of the future will be a mathematically absolute and terminal darkness. A day will come, and this is a thermodynamically inevitable fact, when the expansion will push all galaxies beyond our horizon. If intelligent beings exist on this planet billions of years from now, they will look through their most powerful telescopes and will see no background radiation. They will see no neighboring galaxies. They will see absolutely nothing. They will see an unbreakable black void. The universe will have confined them in total darkness, leaving not a single electromagnetic piece of evidence that anything ever existed beyond their own dying star. That is the true and terrifying nature of the darkness we face, a geometric pressure that is closing in on us right now, second by second. The cycle of creation. Do you believe that cold and absolute cosmic void of the future is the end of the story? Do you think darkness wins? Advance the biological clock in your mind. Billions and trillions of years pass into the future. The last stars have gone out, becoming cold and invisible black dwarfs. Gravity has done its dirty work, allowing the immense black holes to devour entire galaxies. Darkness seems to reign absolutely in a universe stretched to absurdity. But black holes are not immortal. Strict quantum mechanics shows us that they leak. They slowly evaporate energy through what we call Hawking radiation. It takes a ridiculously long time, a 1 followed by 100 zeros in years, but eventually even the last and most monstrous black hole in the cosmos will evaporate completely in a final flash of radiation. What remains then? All matter with mass, atoms, protons, everything that makes up your body and the planets that once existed, will sooner or later decay and disintegrate. At the end of time, the universe will be an immense and monotonous ocean of nothingness, populated solely and exclusively by massless particles, photons wandering in a void in perpetual expansion, light so stretched by dark energy, so immensely weak, that it will illuminate absolutely nothing. The definitive triumph of the blind void, or at least that is what most physicists will tell you because they lack the necessary mathematical imagination. Now apply Einstein's relativity to this final scenario. When there is no mass in the universe, something deeply disturbing happens with the geometry of space and time. Massless particles like light photons simply do not experience time. For a photon traveling at 300,000 km per second, the clock stops completely and distance is reduced to absolute zero. If the universe at the end of days contains solely and exclusively massless photons, then there is absolutely nothing in the entire cosmos that can function as a biological or mechanical clock. There is no physical way to measure the passage of time or the size of space. And in strict geometric physics, if you cannot measure scale, scale ceases to exist. A universe that is infinitely large, infinitely empty and cold, filled only with massless radiation, completely loses its sense of size. It becomes mathematically and geometrically indistinguishable from a universe that is infinitely small, incredibly dense and blazing hot. The conclusion is the best-kept secret of mathematical cosmology. The end of the universe is not an ending. That infinite, stretched and dead darkness of the future, upon losing its metric notion of space and time, becomes with terrifying precision the blazing singularity of the next great explosion. The remote and infinitely dark future of our universe is exactly the same physical entity as the birth of a new universe. Our reality is an endless cycle. What we call a cosmic ending is only the mathematical ignition of the next cosmos. The radiation surrounding us today is literally the evaporated corpse of a previous reality.